Margaret, a 68-year-old woman with silver gray hair and gentle blue eyes, devoted her life to her family. But one message shattered her world. Her only son, Daniel, told her not to reach out anymore. Behind him stood Laura, his stern wife, and Emily, the teenage daughter who once adored her. What happens when love, loyalty, and silence collide inside one family? Before we dive into this story, I want to know something from you. Which country are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments below. And if you love emotional, powerful stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. I always thought motherhood was a lifelong bond. Unshakable, unbreakable. I thought that no matter how far my son went, no matter how old he grew, a mother's place in his heart was secure. But that illusion shattered on a quiet Sunday morning. The day had started peacefully. The sun spilled through the lace curtains of my small suburban home. I was sitting in my favorite armchair by the window, sipping tea from the same chipped mug I'd used for years. A gentle breeze carried the scent of my rose garden inside, and for a moment, I felt calm. Like maybe, just maybe, life wasn't so lonely after all. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text message from Daniel, my only son, my pride, my entire world. My heart leapt. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. Maybe he was finally going to tell me about work or invite me over for dinner or anything. I unlocked my phone with shaking hands. And there it was. "Mom, we need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore at all." I read it once. Then again, my hands froze, my tea growing cold beside me. The words burned into my chest, sharp and final. Please don't reach out anymore at all. It felt like a wall slamming down between us. A door locked. A bond severed. For a long moment I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded in my ears and the room seemed to tilt. I whispered his name aloud. "Daniel," as though saying it might undo what I'd just read. But the message didn't change. Tears welled up in my eyes. My hands trembled as I placed the phone on the table, afraid that if I held it any longer, my heart might break completely. I sat there in silence, listening to the tick of the clock on the wall. Every tick sounded like a hammer striking down on me. Daniel was all I had. His father, my husband, had passed away years ago. I raised Daniel alone, through every scraped knee, every science project, every heartbreak. I'd worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. I'd sacrificed birthdays, friendships, even my own dreams. And now, my son wanted space from me? What had I done so wrong? My mind spiraled. Was it something I said? Something I did? Maybe I'd called him too often. Maybe I'd been too involved. Maybe his wife didn't like me. But to cut me off completely? To ask me never to reach out again? It was like being erased from his life. I wanted to pick up the phone and call him immediately. Demand an explanation. Beg for forgiveness. Something. But my hands refused to move. My pride held me still. A mother should never have to beg her child to love her. The tears finally fell, rolling down my cheeks. My heart ached in a way I couldn't put into words. Loneliness, grief, confusion, all tangled together like a knot too tight to untie. As the hours passed, I stared at that single message again and again, hoping maybe it would disappear, hoping maybe it was just a cruel dream. But it stayed, glowing coldly on the screen. The house around me suddenly felt emptier than ever. The walls seemed to echo with memories. Daniel's laughter when he was little, the sound of his feet running down the hall, his voice calling, "Mom, look what I made." I closed my eyes, remembering the night he graduated college. He had hugged me tightly, tears in his own eyes, and whispered, I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. How could the same boy send me a message like this? My tea had long gone cold. I pushed the mug aside and leaned back in my chair, staring out the window at the roses swaying in the breeze. Their beauty only deepened the ache inside me. Life outside kept moving, blooming, thriving, while I felt like I was withering away. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand answers. But instead, I sat in silence, my heart splintering. By evening, the sky turned gold, then purple, then black. Streetlights flickered on outside. Still, I hadn't moved. My phone sat on the table, its screen dark now, but the words still etched into my soul. Please don't reach out anymore at all. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, sleepless. I replayed every moment of Daniel's childhood in my mind, searching for where I went wrong. I clutched his old baseball cap, one he'd worn when he was 10, as though holding it might bring him back to me. But it didn't. All I had now were memories and silence, and that silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard. The morning after Daniel's message, the world looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The sun still rose, the birds still sang outside my window, and the kettle still whistled on the stove. But inside me, everything was broken. I shuffled into the kitchen, my slippers dragging across the floor. I poured myself a cup of tea, though I knew I wouldn't drink it. My hands shook as I held the mug, and for a moment, I wondered if this was what old age truly felt like. Not just creaky bones and tired muscles, but the heavy, unbearable weight of being unwanted. I glanced at my phone lying face down on the counter. Part of me hoped, foolishly, that Daniel had written again, that maybe it had been a mistake, or that he'd changed his mind overnight. But when I flipped it over, the screen was dark. No new messages, just silence. The silence grew louder with every passing hour. It filled the rooms of my small house, pressed against me like a suffocating fog. For years, I had dreamed of this house buzzing with grandchildren's laughter, Sunday dinners around the table, birthdays with candles and cake. Instead, it was just me, and the echo of a text that had cut deeper than a knife. I tried to distract myself. I watered the roses in the garden, trimmed their stems, and arranged them in a vase. I dusted the shelves, though no one was coming over to see. I even turned on the television, flipping through channels. But every voice seemed too loud, too false. In the end, I turned it off. Silence again. I thought about calling Daniel anyway, just to hear his voice, just to explain myself. Surely he didn't mean never. Surely my son didn't mean to erase me from his life like this. But then I remembered his words. Please don't reach out anymore at all. The finality in that message stopped me. My pride whispered, don't beg, don't humiliate yourself. But my heart screamed, he's your son. Fight for him. I sat at the kitchen table, my phone in front of me, battling with myself. Minutes passed. Then hours. I wrote out messages and deleted them. I dialed his number, then hung up before it rang. It felt like trying to breathe underwater. Every instinct screamed to reach for air, but something heavier pulled me down. By late afternoon, I gave up. I grabbed my old photo albums from the living room cabinet and carried them to the table. If I couldn't reach Daniel, maybe I could at least feel closer to the boy he used to be. The first album was filled with pictures of him as a toddler, his chubby cheeks smeared with cake on his first birthday, his little hands clutching mine as he took his first steps. I touched the photographs gently, tracing his smile with my fingertips. The next album showed him as a teenager, awkward and lanky, his hair always sticking up in strange directions. There was a picture of him at his high school graduation, his arm wrapped around me. both of us grinning with pride. Tears blurred my vision. That boy had once loved me so fiercely. Where had he gone? I shut the album quickly, my chest aching. Memories that once brought joy now felt like daggers. The phone buzzed suddenly and my heart leapt. I scrambled to grab it, praying it was Daniel, but it wasn't. It was just a delivery reminder from the pharmacy. The disappointment crushed me all over again. I slumped back in my chair, clutching the phone tightly, as though squeezing it might force the message I longed for to appear. Nothing came. As night fell, loneliness wrapped itself tighter around me. I heated a bowl of soup but barely touched it. I stared out the window at the empty street, wondering if Daniel was sitting at his table too, laughing with his wife, eating dinner, living his life. Without me, the thought broke me all over again. Finally, I climbed into bed, though I knew sleep wouldn't come. The ceiling above me felt endless, mocking me with its emptiness. I curled into a ball, clutching Daniel's old baseball cap against my chest, whispering his name like a prayer. Daniel, my son, please don't leave me like this. The silence answered back, and for the first time in my life, I wondered if silence might actually kill me. The following days blurred into one another, each one stitched together by the same heavy silence. My phone remained still. No calls, no messages. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the old floorboards kept me company. I moved through the house like a ghost. I cooked meals I didn't eat, folded laundry that didn't need folding, watered the garden though rain had already done the work. Everything felt pointless without Daniel in my life. But the hardest moments weren't the empty hours. They were the memories that kept slipping in, uninvited. One afternoon, while dusting the shelves, I found an old shoebox tucked away in the corner. Inside were the letters Daniel had written me as a child. Messy handwriting, crayon doodles on the edges. One in particular caught my eye. Dear Mom, you are the best mom ever. I love you more than the moon. Love, Danny. I pressed the paper to my chest, the ache inside me swelling until it nearly burst. That little boy had once adored me without condition. How had it turned into this? His words now sharp enough to cut me to the bone. The contrast was unbearable. That night, sleep finally came, but it was cruel. I dreamt of Daniel as a boy again, running through the park with his arms outstretched, calling for me to chase him. I laughed in the dream, my heart light, my legs carrying me after him. But just as I reached for his hand, he disappeared into the fog. I woke up with tears streaming down my face. The days passed, but the wound didn't heal. If anything, it deepened. My thoughts became a carousel of questions. Did I smother him? Did his wife push him away from me? Did I make mistakes I never saw? By the third week, I couldn't bear the silence anymore. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our old conversations. Birthday wishes, holiday greetings, photos he'd sent of his dog. I even found the message from the day he told me he'd proposed. She said, "Yes, Mom. You'll love her, I promise." The cruel irony burned me, because I wasn't sure if she ever loved me at all. That evening, I did something reckless. I drafted a message. Daniel, I love you more than life itself. I don't know what I've done wrong, but please don't shut me out completely. You'll always be my son. I'll always be here. My finger hovered over the send button. My heart screamed to press it, but then my eyes drifted back to his last message. Please don't reach out anymore at all. I froze. If I sent this, would it only push him further away? Would he block me forever? I deleted the draft and set the phone down. My chest tightened as though my ribs were closing in on my heart. That night, I went for a walk around the neighborhood, Couples strolled hand in hand. Children played on bicycles. Families sat together on porches laughing. I kept my head down, afraid someone might see the grief on my face. As I passed one house, I heard a mother calling her son in for dinner. His little voice answered back, full of joy. The sound pierced me so deeply I almost collapsed right there on the sidewalk. I hurried home before the tears came again. Back inside, I poured myself a glass of water, but my hands were shaking so badly that it spilled across the counter. I stared at the mess blankly, realizing it wasn't just the counter that was in ruins. It was me. For the first time, I admitted the truth I'd been avoiding. I wasn't just lonely. I was broken. I sat at the table, clutching one of Daniel's childhood photos. His gap-toothed grin smiled up at me, frozen in time. "Where did you go, my boy?" I whispered. "And why did you leave me behind?" The silence had no answer. And in that silence, I felt something dangerous stir inside me. Something darker than sadness. It was the fear that maybe, just maybe, I had lost my son forever. It had been nearly a month since Daniel's message, and yet every morning I woke with the same sharp ache in my chest. The first thought in my mind was always the same. My son doesn't want me anymore. But on the 31st morning, something unexpected happened. My phone buzzed. I scrambled for it, my heart racing, a wild hope crashing through me. For one glorious second, I imagined Daniel's name on the screen, maybe a simple "Hi, Mom," or even an apology. Anything to break the silence. But it wasn't him. It was his wife, Emily. The message was short, almost cold. "Daniel is busy. Please respect his wishes and give us space." I stared at the words, my stomach sinking. So it was her. I had suspected, but now I felt certain. She was the wall between us. Still, her message stirred something in me. Busy? Busy enough to erase his own mother? Busy enough to forget the woman who carried him, who raised him, who sacrificed everything? Anger bubbled up inside me, mixing with the grief. For weeks I had been drowning in sorrow. But now, for the first time, I felt a flicker of something else. A need for answers. That evening, I went to the drawer where I kept my journals. I had written in them for years, pouring out my heart on paper, documenting every moment of Daniel's life. His first steps, his first heartbreak, the day he left for college. I opened the most recent one and began to write. My hand trembled, but my words were steady. If my son won't hear my voice, maybe one day he'll read my truth. Maybe one day he'll know what his silence has done to me. The pen scratched across the page until my hand ached. By the time I closed the journal, I felt lighter, though no less broken. But the ache only grew the next morning. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. Emily's message replayed in my mind. What if Daniel didn't even know she had written me? What if she had sent it without his knowledge, intercepting him before he could respond? The thought made my heart race. I began to wonder, was my son truly pushing me away? Or was someone else doing it for him? The idea consumed me. I thought back to the early days after he married Emily. She had been polite, but distant. I had tried to win her over with kindness, hosting dinners, bringing small gifts, even offering to help with house projects. But she always seemed guarded, protective. And now this message. I couldn't help but feel she was keeping Daniel from me. The thought sparked a dangerous hope. If it wasn't him, maybe he still loved me. Maybe he still wanted me. Maybe he was trapped in the silence just as I was. That night, I lay awake, wrestling with my thoughts. The anger, the grief, the love, all of it tangled together until I didn't know what to feel anymore. Finally, I whispered into the darkness, "Daniel, if you still love me, give me a sign." "Please, just a sign." The room stayed quiet. No sign came. But the next morning when I stepped into the garden, I saw a single rose blooming brighter than all the rest. Deep red, its petals perfect. For a moment, I let myself believe it was the sign I had begged for. I clipped the rose and placed it in a vase on my kitchen table. Its beauty filled the room, even as my heart remained heavy. Days passed. Still no word from Daniel. But that rose reminded me of something important. Not everything was dead. Not everything had been cut off, and maybe, just maybe, the door wasn't completely closed. The rose on my table lasted 7 days. On the 8th, its petals began to curl and fall one by one, until only the brittle stem remained. I stared at it for a long time before finally throwing it away. Somehow it felt symbolic, like even the hope I had been clinging to was withering. But that was the day the silence broke. I was in the kitchen, rinsing dishes, when my phone buzzed. My hands shook as I reached for it. This time it was Daniel. His name lit up the screen. I answered on the first ring. "Daniel." My voice cracked. There was a pause, then his voice, familiar yet strained. "Mom." Tears blurred my vision. For a moment I couldn't even speak. Then the dam broke. "Daniel, I've missed you so much. Please don't do this to me." He sighed heavily. "Mom, we need to talk." I sank into a chair. "Then talk. Please, just don't shut me out like this." His tone was clipped, rehearsed. "It's not that we don't love you. But Emily and we need boundaries. You've been too involved, too present. We feel suffocated." The words cut deeper than any knife. "Too involved?" I thought of every dinner, every holiday, every time I had said yes when they asked for help. Suffocation? I thought of every check I'd written, every sacrifice I'd made so he could live the life he wanted. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I only wanted to be there for you, to support you." "I know," he said, softer now, "but it's too much. Emily feels like you're interfering in our marriage, in our choices. And honestly, I agree. We need some space to figure out our lives without you hovering." Hovering. That was the word he chose. As if my love had become a burden. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to breathe. "Daniel, I'm not trying to control you. I just want to be part of your life. Is that so wrong?" He didn't answer right away. Then finally, "Mom, this isn't easy for me. But right now, the best thing you can do for us is nothing. Please, don't call, don't text. Just let us live." The line went silent. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, even after the call had ended. My son's voice echoed in my head. "The best thing you can do for us is nothing." For hours I didn't move. I felt like the floor had fallen out from under me. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced the apartment, my mind replaying the conversation over and over. Too involved, suffocating, do nothing. How had love turned into this? At dawn, I sat by the window, watching the city wake. People hurried along the sidewalks, carrying coffee cups, checking their watches. Life went on, indifferent to my heartbreak, and that was when I realized something. Daniel's words had broken me, but they had also freed me. For so long I had defined myself by my role in his life. His mother, his safety net, his constant supporter. I had poured every ounce of myself into him, into making sure he had everything he wanted. But what about me? What about my wants, my needs, my life? I thought back to the years after my husband's death. I had buried my own grief, my own dreams, because Daniel had needed me. Every decision I made, every check I wrote had been about keeping him afloat. And now, he didn't need me. Or worse, he didn't want me. The thought was unbearable, but also liberating. If my son truly wanted space, then maybe it was time I gave it to him. Not as punishment, but as survival, for me. That afternoon, I opened my laptop and searched for something I hadn't thought about in years. Travel. I had always dreamed of visiting Italy. The rolling vineyards of Tuscany, the art in Florence, the canals of Venice. Robert and I had planned to go after retirement, but then life had other plans. Now, staring at the photos on the screen, something stirred inside me. A spark. Why not go? What was stopping me, really? Certainly not Daniel. He had made it clear I was no longer part of his daily life. For the first time in years, I thought about doing something just for myself. By the time the sun set, I had booked a ticket. As I closed my laptop, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Yes, my heart was still broken. Yes, Daniel's rejection would haunt me. But maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. I looked around my apartment, at the silence that had once felt unbearable. Tonight it felt different. Tonight it felt like a blank page, and for the first time, I was ready to write my own story. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of quiet preparation. For the first time in years, my days weren't filled with waiting by the phone, hoping for Daniel's voice, or rearranging my schedule around his family's needs. Instead, I was focused on myself, on what came next. The ticket to Italy sat on my nightstand, a physical reminder that I still had choices. I packed slowly, deliberately. Every dress, every pair of shoes felt like an act of reclaiming. This wasn't just luggage. It was a declaration. But then, 3 days before my flight, the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer. When I finally did, Daniel's voice cracked through the line. "Mom?" My chest tightened. "Daniel, what is it?" There was a long pause, then a sigh. "I heard you're leaving. Emily told me you booked a trip." "Yes," I said evenly. "I'm going to Italy." Silence stretched between us. Then quietly, "Why now?" I almost laughed. Why now? After everything? But instead I said, "Because, Daniel, I've spent years living for everyone but myself. And now that you've made it clear I'm not wanted in your life, I've realized I don't have to stay here waiting to be useful. I get to live too." He didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his words surprised me. "I didn't mean for you to feel unwanted. I didn't know how to set boundaries without pushing you away completely." I closed my eyes, the ache deep and familiar. "Daniel, you asked me to disappear. Do you know what that does to a mother? To hear her own child say her presence is suffocating?" His voice cracked. "I know. I was wrong." Tears welled in my eyes, but I held my ground. "I don't know if you were wrong, Daniel. Maybe you needed this. Maybe I did too. But you can't erase words like that. They don't vanish just because you regret them." He sniffed. "Mom, will you come back?" I swallowed hard. I don't know. The truth was I would always love him. That would never change. But love didn't mean staying where I wasn't respected. We said goodbye. The kind of goodbye that feels unfinished. and I sat in the silence that followed. The day of my flight, I stood at the airport gate, clutching my passport. My heart raced, but not from fear, from something else. Anticipation. As the plane took off, I looked down at the city below. The city where I had loved, lost, sacrificed, and been broken. And as the clouds swallowed it from view, I whispered, "Goodbye." Italy was everything I had dreamed of. The cobbled streets of Florence, the vineyards that stretched across golden hills, the sound of water lapping against the stones of Venice. For the first time in decades, I felt alive. I laughed with strangers. I sipped wine at sunset. I stood before Michelangelo's David and realized that beauty still had the power to move me to tears. And somewhere, in the quiet of a Tuscan morning, I understood something important. My story didn't end when Daniel pushed me away. It began again. I still loved him. I always would. But love, I had learned, couldn't erase the need for self-respect. And if the choice was between waiting for his crumbs of affection or building a life of my own, I would choose myself. Every time. Months later, when I returned home, there was a letter waiting in my mailbox. From Daniel, Mom. I don't know how to undo what I said, but I want to try. I see now how much you gave, how much I took, and how cruel I was in asking you to vanish from my life. Emily and I are working through our own struggles, but I want you to know you'll always be my mother, and I need you. Not for money, not for help, just for you. Love, Daniel. I pressed the letter to my chest and let the tears come. Maybe one day we would heal, maybe not. But either way, I had finally learned the lesson I should have understood long ago. Being a mother doesn't mean erasing yourself. It doesn't mean giving until you're empty. It means loving fiercely, but also knowing when to step back and when to begin again. I poured myself a glass of wine, lifted it toward the window and whispered to the night, to new beginnings. That was today's story. But now I want to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Let me know in the comments. I read each one. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next powerful story coming your way.